I can totally see the maybe intimidation about joining a program like this, not knowing it from the inside, but looking from the outside, thinking that maybe you're not, I don't know, like good enough at the time to apply, and is this actually going to help me? Because swimming, especially if you don't necessarily come from a swimming background, if you're really struggling with maybe making 100 or 400 meters with your freestyle, it's like, wow, so I feel like a real beginner. And it's a sport that can sort of take someone with a lot of confidence, but if they get in the water and they can't swim, it's like, you feel like like you're starting from scratch, and it feels like a very daunting thing to learn. So I'm glad that you did apply and we started working together. And some of the things that we saw in that initial video were looking a long way forwards, legs were dropping a lot, and as a result, really hard to get the arms out and so on. And one of the first things we worked on was balance and just minimizing drag. And you said at the start of this call, before we were talking, that you don't know how the improvement in body position came along, but it just started to improve. Can you remember some of the things that you first started working on or putting your attention to in the first sort of 3 to 6 months?
Well, I can tell you things I started to put less attention to because I realized they weren't really that important, and I thought they were. One of those is the kick. I think I watched a podcast that you'd done with, I think his name was Karsten, the other day. It was on, right. And he mentioned the kick, and that he thought that was so important, and that's where all your propulsion comes from. And once I realized that that's completely wrong, at least for someone at my level, to just not focus on that at all, or not really focus on it much, do a 4-beat kick, I think is what I usually do. Once I dispensed with that whole notion and started to focus on upper body, that's when some things really started to click. And then the second thing I ignored was I was just obsessed with bilateral breathing. Good swimmers must breathe on both sides. It has to be symmetrical. It has to look just a certain way. And I realized after watching some Olympic swimmers, they don't do that. That's not really necessary. It's probably a good skill to have, perhaps in open water, where you're dealing with a wind from one side or the other. But I dispensed with that whole notion about bilateral breathing and just stuck to the side that works best for me. And then the legs started to just come up after about a year of working with you. And I think I remember being very excited when I could do 145 for 100 yards with 95% effort, but I was doing it. And so that was exciting. I remember that happening. But really since that time, and then with the couple of months of shutdown that we had from COVID, kind of felt a little like I'm just treading water, but it pleased with the very slow progress. So the whole issue with older folks, I think, is muscle memory and getting your body to do something repeatedly and naturally. And the freestyle high elbow catch stroke is a very unnatural thing to do with your body. At least it seems that way to me. It seems very awkward until you've done it thousands of times, and then it becomes less awkward. And maybe if you learned it as a kid, like I'm sure you did, it doesn't seem awkward at all. But it seems very awkward and somewhat difficult for someone in their 50s, even with good mobility. But it eventually just comes about.